Today, I want to be talking to you about the art of the minimum viable product. Essentially, what I want to talk to you about is how you can launch a product in such a way that you can sell it without needing to break the bank. And I have experienced so many conversations with founders who have an incredible idea for something they want to build, something they want to launch, and they are stuck. And I want to tell you some of the reasons I see them being stuck in here. And you can switch the word. I'm going to use product very much in a tech sense today, just because that's my experience here. But you know, this works for services as well. And some of the examples I'm going to be giving you here is how we launched a service in a way that didn't cost us a ton of time or money and netted us a FTSE 250 company. It can be done. So what are we going to learn? The number one reason founders get stuck and are unable to launch products that they have a great idea for, that they can see a gap in the market for, but they are not able to get to the point of being able to launch that. I want to give you 3 ideas that are going to help you launch anything that you can dream up for less money than you expect. And I think this is a really key point here. I have never worked with a founder and really challenged their thinking with these 3 ideas and not being able to reduce the cost of launching their product by at least 10 times. We are always overcomplicating things. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the minimal viable launch process, which is the culmination of this journey that I've been on for maybe the last 5 years of launching products, scaling them, really seeing like where the extra cost and complexity comes from. And I will show you what this process looks like and how you can start to implement it for yourselves in your own businesses. Before we do that, all of this knowledge that I'm going to be giving you here today is included in the Minimal Viable Launch book that's coming out on April the 19th. And I just want to say thank you to everyone in this community who's been so encouraging around helping us get this book out the door, doing things like voting on covers, giving us your opinions on those things. It means so much that we're not just trudging through the dark on our own on this stuff. And I think your ideas and feedback on some of the chapters that I've shared, the covers, etc., has resulted in a much better book. So that's coming out on April 19th. I'm sorry, but you're not going to hear me shut up about it until well after that point. Okay, so let's get into it. Why do founders get stuck? Well, the number one reason. I want to give you a concept. Whenever you hear stories that repeat, you should stop and pay attention. We touched on this a little bit last week of, you know, innovation really comes from these, or destiny comes knocking, and you need to listen. I think the way I really want to say this is, if you keep hearing people having the same problems in the same ways that are confusing to you of why they encounter these problems, you should stop and listen, because that is the nexus, that is the seed of a incredible idea that you can breathe some life into and create a really fun and fulfilling business around solving that problem. So I was encountering the same story again and again and again, and it was really driving me nuts, if I'm quite honest with you. And in fact, this is the thing that started me off on writing the book. I wrote a 3-page PDF guide to solve this problem. It spawned into something much bigger in this group. But here is the story I was hearing. I was meeting founders and entrepreneurs every day in my mentorship work, in my consultancy, and in my wider network, that, you know, these people had incredible ideas for products that they saw a gap in the market for, and they believed in so much, and they knew that if they could just get this thing launched, they would be able to monetize it. They would be able to make people very happy. They would have a fulfilling business that was profitable. And maybe, just maybe, they might get to that magical point where they can have the life-changing exit in 5 to 10 years for a, 6-7 figure sum, right? But here is what I was encountering. Those same founders who were so full of passion, so full of great ideas, and so full of drive, never got to the point of releasing a product. And I was left at the sidelines scratching my head, because how does this happen? And this happens more often than I think you would imagine. People have incredible plans. They have the branding, they have the logo. If you're like me at the start of my entrepreneur journey in my early 20s, you've got 20 different domains that you've bought for business ideas that you've never launched, right? They keep getting stuck in this loop. They never get to the point of launching. They never get to a point of having a product that someone could actually buy. Why was that? So I started to dig into these conversations. I was doing a lot in the kind of summer last year of these one-to-one consultations where people would go for coffee with them, and I would like dig into this problem because it was driving me nuts. I wasn't even trying to monetize this at this point. I was just trying to understand. This is what I came to understand. People were spending much more time on the problem of raising money, raising investment, getting an investor to say yes to their idea, than they were on actually building a product that could be something that they could charge for. And this really, I think, confused me, right? I spent a long time thinking like, why is everyone doing this? Why? This doesn't seem logical to me. Surely we should be building a business that can make money first and foremost. And once you start making money, then we'll probably get investors interested in the idea, right? And so before we dive into the why that this happens, I just want to ask you, have you ever had an idea for a product or a service that you've wanted to build, but you didn't get to the point of launching this because you thought it was going to cost you too much money to do and you got stuck? I think a lot of founders experience this, and it's a real shame because there are ways we can solve this problem. And I started to think about this problem a little bit more in depth, right? Of why did this happen? Founders were getting stuck on the problem of raising money because their idea that they were trying to launch was too complex, right? It's this Gordian knot that is impossible to untie. It's too entwined. There's too many component pieces that added complexity, added cost. So when they go and speak to developers or they think about developing this themselves, they realize it's going to take them years to get this thing to a point where they can launch it and where they can monetize it. And so then starts the trap that they get stuck into, and they start to switch their focus where they spend much more effort and time on their pitch decks than they do building their business. We're working with a company at the moment that I think is stuck in this trap. They have raised some significant pre-seed investment, so that's good for them. They are not under so much time pressure. We spend more time working on their pitch deck than their product, which is a worry for me. So this idea is, if you try and launch something that is complex, that is fully featured, that is something that people are going to be really excited about using, you're going to have too much complexity in there to be able to afford to build it unless you are a very wealthy individual in the first place. And if you are a very wealthy individual in the first place, you probably aren't trying to launch a complex business because you've probably been through this cycle before and learnt the lesson. So I had an insight. Why was I able to look at people's business ideas and reduce the cost of launching that minimum viable product, getting something into the hands of their customers and getting them paying by, on average, like, let's say 10x, if not more? What did I know that other people didn't? Because I had seen people do incredible amounts of businesses with these three things here. So we launched a new website development process with a PDF to the screams of my team members telling me this was a really bad idea because our website was a one-page website. In fact, it's still a one-page website. A one-page website with really bad copy, kind of didn't work on mobile. We didn't have a privacy policy or anything like that. It was awful. No animations, nothing. You would never buy a web development service from someone who had such a bad website, right? But I want to say no. We created a PDF and we stated the problem so well and so succinctly in that PDF. I was able to sell that process for the first time out the gate to Octopus, a FTSE 250 company with nothing but a PDF. If I had listened to the instincts of most people, we would have spent £5,000 to £10,000 on redoing our website, probably a couple of months in doing so, in order to feel confident enough to sell that. But I want to say to you, you can sell something in a much rougher state than you're probably willing to entertain at this point. So you can do it with a PDF. You can also do it with Google Sheets. The story I told you last week of how we scaled this data analytics product to £2 million in annual recurring revenue, we launched that with a Google Sheet template where I was manually entering data into it. And this is in an area that has tons of regulation, legal regulation. That means you have to be very careful with what you're doing. And the data that we were interacting with was incredibly sensitive and has a ton of like GDPR, like nightmare material around it, right? So I get a lot of pushback on this idea of launching something that's rough and ready from people who say, well, but I can't do that because our area is special. There's more security risks, or it's more complex, or there's more regulation. I guarantee you it's probably not as regulated as children's mental health data being put into Google Sheets. I have also seen someone launch a product that did over 6 figures of business with nothing but a Word document. And when this happened, I questioned my entire career as a designer because it was the most ugly, awful looking thing I've ever seen in my life. And I looked at everything I'd been doing for the past 8 years and said, do you know what? Design doesn't matter, does it? Design actually isn't the differentiator for why these products are successful or not. It's clearly understanding a problem and stating it very, very clearly. So this guy launched a trial coaching offer through nothing but a Word document that he shared via email when people messaged him on LinkedIn saying, I'm in. And he did over 6 figures of that in his first 6 months of launching it. And it gave me an identity crisis. So here's what I know that I think you guys don't. Here's what I've experienced with those experiences and working with founders on launching their minimum viable products that allows us to get to the point where we can reduce the cost of building whatever the hell it is by 10x so that you can sack those investors off, you can build a business that you can charge money for this product rather than building like what I'm starting to term as people building an investment vehicle, not a business that solves a problem. They're building a pitch deck that can raise money and they spend 6 to 9 months doing that rather than let's go and make our first 1,000 or our first £10,000, right? So inverse curves. This is a really interesting concept that I definitely need to come up with a better name for because I kind of see people glaze over when I say this, but please stick with me on this. This is one of the most important things I think I could teach you in business. Inverse curves are how you counteract the most problematic thing about launching a software business, launching the minimum viable product. When most people launch minimum viable products, they operate down here in this, you see this black little valley here with the skull. That's where startups go to die because it costs you £10,000, £100,000, £600,000 to start building this platform, and all the while you are not making any money because it's not being built in a way that you can monetize, and you are having to kind of lay the train tracks in front of you as you're going faster and faster and faster and hope that you can raise enough money to get to a point where you build enough value into the product where you can start earning money from people and they stick around long enough to launch you out of this negative valley of death here into the territory where you're earning money and hopefully into the stratosphere where you're having that, life-changing exit. J-curve businesses suck. They really, really suck. They are very difficult to get right because it requires a huge cash burn. But J-curve businesses are not how the best entrepreneurs that I know in my network launch anything. They wouldn't dream of it because they've been burnt by it before most of the time. What they instead do is they launch the inverse curve. So they say, well, look, if we eventually want to build this piece of software, if we eventually want to automate this and serve millions of customers, sure, we're going to have to invest a ton of money. But could we do it for 5 customers? Could we do it for 10 customers, 20 customers in a way that allows us to charge money up front? More of a service-based mindset usually that doesn't require a ton of investment in technology and allows us to start billing so that we can maybe attract that investment in a much easier way because we have a business, not an idea at this point. So the inverse curve is you spending time to say, this is what the software looks like, fine, but what does the service look like? And if we go back to that Google Sheets example, the service we started to launch was me manually putting data in a Google Sheets template to give people the kind of reports they were asking. That was going to cost us millions in development effort to build, and instead charging them for that white glove service, right? And I guarantee you, every single person in here who is struggling to get something launched, if you spent more time thinking about how you could launch the inverse curve, what's the service, how could you charge for this sooner, you would actually have a business in next to no time that you can charge money for, and it will relieve a lot of pressure that you're going to be feeling. The second is founders try to avoid their trench hours when it should be the thing that they are embracing. So what do I mean by trench hours? Trench hours are the moment in your business where things aren't highly automated, nothing's that smooth, you don't have a massive team around you taking care of all of the admin and the kind of little annoying things that allow you to solve the problem. People try and build MVPs that can handle 1,000 to 100,000 customers when they don't even have a single paying customer yet. And that just adds cost and complexity. And agencies and development partners will love to add that stuff in for you because they'll be able to bill you so much more to build it, right? But instead, you should be running towards the trench hours. You should be diving in, dealing with the chaos, because it's in that chaos you're going to learn incredible amounts about your customers, incredible amounts about the problem you solve, and you can handle 5 to 10 customers. You could do manual onboarding for your MVP. You could reset someone's password if they ask you for it. You could handle those support tickets without having an automated ticketing system in the early days. Will it suck? Yes. Are you going to have to do some long hours? Most probably. But the whole work-life balance conversation is a luxury for people who have money in the bank, right? We need to be earning money, and that means we need to be getting in those trenches, rolling up our sleeves, and this is one of the most important periods of your business growth, is when you're in there on the front line, learning about what you do in a very real and visceral way. And then the last concept, I was really trying to get AI to generate this image for me, but apparently prison shivs are not something that DALL-E will generate. I want to show you the contrast. Most people are trying to build this thing up the top here, which is this Swiss Army knife, right? It's got the automated onboarding. It's got the 20 features in it that people think they really need. You can reset your password. You can sign up in a smooth way. It's got a flashy website. All of this stuff. They want to build all of that. And then they wonder why it costs so much to launch and that they have to go on this investment journey. Instead, what you should be building is more akin to like this thing at the bottom, which is like a prison shiv, using available materials, off-the-shelf components, and it is functional, not flashy. It is designed to get a very particular and singular job done. And if you allowed yourself to cut your product to the bone, by being willing to be doing the trench hours, by being willing to launch the inverse curve, I guarantee you could identify a route to launching your MVP much, much sooner and at a much, much lower cost. So be willing to build that functional MVP, not the flashy thing. And it's a really hard trap to get out of. And I'll tell you what people say to me. And you might be suffering from this problem if you have said things like this yourself. I've had numerous conversations with founders who have got something that I think could be launched as a true minimum viable product. But they say something akin to me, oh, I could go out and make sales of this, but I'm too embarrassed to show it to people. It's too rough. It's not ready yet. And we talked about this idea of like, don't try and make the one perfect pot, go and make 1,000 pots, right? This is the same notion, which is when you're feeling that embarrassment, lean into it. That's exactly when you should be showing it to people, because it is in that embarrassing stage that you'll get the realest feedback from people, because they'll feel like it's not a finished product. They feel like it's something they can feedback on, and it's something they'll get excited to help you build rather than showing them this shiny object which they'll just kind of nod their head at and say, yeah, it looks good, because they don't want to hurt your feelings, because they know you've spent a lot of time and effort on it. So those are the 3 principles. I want to show you how we ended up coming up with this minimal viable launch process now. Like, how did we create the experiment that made this work, right? Because we launched this in a minimal way ourselves as well. We were saying, all right, I think if we could launch with an inverse curve, if we could be willing to do the manual things ourselves, if we were willing to really strip this product back and make it functional, not flashy, we could get paying customers, we could minimize the cost of launch, and we could have something that, you know, we could afford to fund and build ourselves internally. So we said, let's run an experiment. And the experiment was this. I am a really big believer in coaching. I have been on many, you know, pretty expensive mastermind courses, and I really believe in that. But all of these mastermind coaches were telling me the same thing. Again, if you hear stories that repeat, stop and listen. There's money to be made. All of these coaches had very, very strong personal brands. They had grown their coaching offer to a point where they had felt like they were hitting a glass ceiling. They were getting to a number of students where they could no longer remember everyone's personal situations, exactly what they were doing or what even their business was doing, right? And they felt like every time they tried to grow past that, their business would come crashing down again because everyone just wanted coaching from them, not the team they were trying to build around this. I thought it was a really interesting problem. And it was one that 4 different coaches had said to me in various forms. So I said to my team, let's go on this experiment. Let's see if we can create a product, which we called Game Planner, that would solve this problem for these coaches. And here is the process in which we decided we were going to experiment and see if this minimal viable launch would actually work, right? Let me just show you the full screen here. So the minimal viable launch is a 9-step process that takes you from an idea to something that you can get paying customers for. You need a game plan. You need to verify that what you're actually going to solve is a real problem. You need a really strong vision. You need a validated prototype. And then into the back end of this half, you can start to refine, build the true minimum viable product, build out an exciting roadmap, and do your launch, right? This was our idea. But what we actually discovered is you can get paying customers with only these 4 steps here. If you have a game plan for getting your product made and into customers' hands, if you have verified that this problem you're trying to solve is real, if you have a really compelling, exciting vision, and you have that functional prototype, I'm not even going to call it a minimum viable product, it's a prototype. If you have a functional prototype that gives your customers the light bulb moment that you are actually going on the journey to solve their problem and they can come on that journey too, this is all you need to get paying customers for anything that you launch. This is how you minimize the spend on launching an MVP. So look, how did this turn out? Because we run this experiment ourselves internally here in kind of back end of January this year. And we're at a bit of a crossroads in our business of whether we continue on with this idea or we continue on with minimal viable launch as a consultancy. I don't actually know where we'll end up on this yet. But here's what happened. We set the game plan. Your game plan needs to be revolved around one thing and one thing only, and that is getting people to say yes to paying for your product. If you are pre-launch, if you are working on a minimum viable product, and you are not working on the problem of getting the first money in your bank account, we're focused on the wrong thing. We are focusing on the wrong thing. Unless you can really say to me that what you're doing is a deep tech startup that's going to take you 5 years of R&D, let's put that to one side. Most people are not doing that. You need to be getting paying customers because otherwise you're building this investment vehicle. You're not building a business, right? So we created this game plan. What did this game plan look like? We said in the verify stage, in step 1, if we could get 5 to 10 of these coaches who run these, 10 to 30,000 pound mastermind programs, primarily online, who have a strong personal brand, if we could get 5 or 10 of them to speak with us, and we could find 2 or 3 experts who are in the coaching world who could add some variety to those opinions, and we conducted those deep dive research sessions that I'm always banging on to you about, and we synthesized that research, and we could come up with an interesting problem that we think is valid, and that story repeats through those 5 to 10 customers, we would move through step 1 and we'd give ourselves a tick on the board and say, right, this is something we should proceed with. We did that. We talked to 5 coaches in the end and some coaching experts, and they all said the same thing. They repeated the story of this feeling of having this glass ceiling, that their personal brand was responsible for so much of their success, but was also the thing now holding them back. Cool. We verified that that's the problem. We then take that shared understanding. The team is now super excited because they have done the research with me. They've been in the room. They've heard people say the problem. Suddenly the penny drops for them of why I've been excited about this idea. So we gather them. We craft the vision. We create the exciting North Star idea that was going to take us 5 years, 10 years to actually achieve. It's the thing that starts to really scare my team. The North Star is so compelling that people start to go, can we actually do this? Is this actually possible? Is it even technically possible? Do we have the skills? When you get that feeling in your stomach, your North Star is big enough. If you're not scared of what you're doing, go back to the drawing board, dream a little bit bigger, because you need that fear to drive you forward into a place that is going to get your customers excited. And then we created something called the vision prototype. And the vision prototype at this stage is just a clickable prototype in Figma, but you could do it in Google Sheets. It could be the Word document. It could be the PDF. Anything that you know how to use. Use a tool that you know. Don't get stuck up on trying to do something technical. We create this vision prototype, and the vision prototype is just the storyboard, essentially, of the light bulb moment that we want to give those same customers that we've just spoken to. That if we can give them that light bulb moment and say, look, we listened to you, we've created this. Does it solve your problem? And if that light bulb goes off in their head, we have them in a really good place to get them to buy. So we create that vision prototype. We move into step 3, which is validating this thing. We cut away at that vision prototype ruthlessly, right? Remember the Swiss Army knife versus the prison shank. I say, to give them the light bulb moment, we don't need to be able to onboard them. They don't need to be able to change their password. They don't need to be able to create an account. We don't need to create a Stripe account. We don't need all of this stuff. We just cut relentlessly away to a point where cutting feels uncomfortable, where you think, actually, this thing is now so rough and ready, why would anyone use it? Once you start getting to that point, you've got down far enough where you're making very difficult decisions that this is probably something you can now afford to build, and now it's time to go and build it. So we built this prototype using something called the WWX stack, which stands for Webflow, Wiz, and Xano. This is just a tool we know how to use, and we got this built in 2 weeks, right? You could continue on with your clickable prototype. It could be a PowerPoint presentation. It can be that Word document. As I said, that guy launched that Word document and it did 6 figures of business in the first 6 months. His prototype was, do I know the wording that is compelling enough to get someone to say, hey, I'm in? We went back to those same 5 customers and we showed it to them. We gave them the light bulb moment and they got visibly excited about what we'd done. And if your customers, when you're showing them this solution you've created, aren't saying to you things like, when's this going to come out? I want to know about it. How do I follow the progress of this? When can I use this? When's it, like, giving you those signs? You probably want to go back to the vision and refine that vision, because this is way cheaper to do than refining your MVP, trust me. The vision and the prototype that you create to illustrate that vision has to be able to secure you sales. If it's not, we should not proceed forward with building this thing. It should be able to secure sales, sign-ups, early adopters. And if you're not getting that feedback, it's a sign that you're not quite articulating their problems and how you're going to solve them in a way that's compelling. And then importantly, you ask them for the sale. Would you buy this? And make them feel that it's going to be real. Say to them, we're going to be launching this, and as payback for all of your feedback into creating this idea, we'd like to offer you a way to become an early adopter at a cut down price, but there has to be monetary value attached to it, right? Can't be say, hey, become a customer for free, because there's no risk involved for them there. You ask for the sale and you ask for those yeses. If you get the yes, fine, go and build the expensive MVP. If you don't get the yes, you've just saved yourself a ton of time and effort. And again, go back to the vision, rinse and repeat until you get yeses. And in the book, I detail this process a lot more in terms of the nuance of like, how do you ask for this sale? We won't go into that here. If people are interested in that, I don't know, chuck in the chat, like if you want me to do a session of how you ask for a sale in a way that doesn't feel icky in this context, I can do that as well as another lunch and learn. So we did that. What was the results? Right? Does the minimal viable launch work? Well, out of those 5, we got 3 different coaches who were like, yes, I need this right now. How much is it going to cost and when are you going to launch it? So we were able to say to them, very finger in the air cost, which is an absolute bargain for them. We got 3 yeses out of the 5. The other 2 people were like, actually, I think it needs to be a little bit further on than this before we jump in. But they're still like in this early adopter community that we've now started to build. There's 5 people in the world who have incredible connections who now know about what we're doing here. That's exciting because we can expand that out. One of those people was so excited about what we're doing, I was treated to some lovely dinners and an offer of some angel investment. Now, we turned that down because we've cut this thing to the bone so much. We actually don't need investment. And I don't know about you, I really like being free in business. The idea of having a boss, of angel investor breathing down my neck, kind of fills me with dread. That sounds like being employed again, if I'm honest with you. And I hated being employed. So we turned that down, but we have that connection now. And if we needed to ramp that up, we could probably re-engage that conversation. But I also know it's compelling enough that someone wants to put some money forward, so could probably find others to do that. We built this entire thing in 2 weeks. Now, we're quite lucky here at Minimal Viable Launch because we're all a bunch of super nerds and are in here building these kind of products anyway. I don't want you to get stuck on the tech. I want you to say, I've seen this done with a PowerPoint slide that looks like the product. So if you can use Figma or PowerPoint, you can do exactly what we've done here. It doesn't need to be real. Remember, I did that 2 million in ARR with Google Sheets templates. You all know how to use a spreadsheet. If you roll your sleeves up and do all of this yourself, you can do this for free. Figma, you can have a free account on. You can use Google Slides. You could use AI tools to generate some of these product images like for you. You can create the PowerPoint. Whatever it is, you can get this done for free. I guarantee you that. So those were the results. And Daniel, you've said something there that I think is really important, is that the numbers are small and yet meaningful, because this is the idea, right? You don't need 1,000 people to launch your MVP. That would be a disaster for your business, because your MVP, the thing that you launch here, if you use this methodology, is going to be so rough and ready. You don't want 1,000 people anywhere near it, because some of those people will get very pissed off with how bad the product is, right? You want to be able to keep the numbers small, be in the trenches with those customers, be there alongside them, fighting this problem you're trying to solve, being able to respond quickly to support issues or anything that comes up. But this is validation. And when you have this, you can then start to expand the complexity out and start to automate yourself out of the trenches. So you are able to get this done. And you are able to do this for any of you in this room. I haven't had a single conversation with any of you where you're saying, hey, I want to build this product, and I've gone, nope, you need investment. There is always a way, again, unless you're telling me it's a deep tech startup or something like biotech or something like that, right? I have no experience in in that world. If you are launching something that solves a narrow problem, and it's probably in a B2B space, you can use this process to launch for 10x the cost lower than you are possibly thinking. You can avoid this number one reason that founders get stuck. Decomplexify it. I don't even think that's a word. Make it less complex. And you will be able to move forward because you will be able to get it built without having to waste all the time knocking on all those investors' doors saying, please give me some money. I want to build a business. Just go and build the business. And the way you do that, those 3 ideas to recap, is you find the inverse curve. How can you make money sooner with building less technology using your idea? I had a conversation with someone the other week who wanted to build the property rental platform, and they had been quoted 6 figures for it. I was like, why do we need any of that? You need a spreadsheet with the contact details of landlords. You need a group with people who want to rent those kind of properties, and you need a phone. That's how you launch that business. Stay away from the 6-figure investments for my sanity, please. So launch with the inverse curve. Be willing to roll your sleeves up and do your trench hours and know it's going to suck, but it's also going to be one of the most meaningful things you do in your business at the start of it in terms of unlocking further growth. And build the prison shiv, not the Swiss Army knife. Build the thing that is straight and to the point and solves that problem, and cut everything to the bone. Get rid of the complexity so you can lower that cost. And then, if this sounds interesting to you, as I said, the MVL process, the book will detail this in more detail. I am happy to wax lyrical to you about how you can do this. So put questions in the Facebook group of, if you're getting stuck of how you would do this for your exact idea, ask me a question in that group. I will respond to you and say, this is what I would do instead. Because I think I've got the experience of doing this, that I can see the way where most people get stuck in that complexity. And it's also easier when it's not my idea, because I haven't spent 6 months thinking about it. So, does anyone have any questions about the products they're trying to build or services they're trying to launch where they might be stuck, where I might be able to give you some insights? Danielle, I know you've got your launch coming up. Did that help in any shape or form of maybe unsticking you to be willing to launch faster?
It does. Well, I'm launching on Friday, and mine probably, in looking back and listening to you for the last sort of 40 minutes, probably could have been even further trimmed back. And you're absolutely right that it does feel really ugly and clumsy and not your best work at all, because in my head I can see how I want it to be and how I want it to play out. But I also appreciate, listening to people like yourself, Lee, that there's value later down the line to be added in doing the small things now, putting it under people's noses. And I know even what I'm launching on Friday looks completely and feels completely different to when I first started, and that's because of the market research. It's because people were getting stuck on one word that I'd used in the copy, or something really, bizarre, or an image that I'd used that I just wouldn't even have thought about. But because my ideal customer was saying to me, I'm confused, I'm thinking, how can you be confused? But because they're saying it, I've got to listen to it.
You've got to address it. And you only get that feedback when you move forward and launch. This is the big problem, right? Is if you spend the 6 months and raise the money and then you build the really complex machine, I guarantee you're still wrong in a million ways you'd never expect. We had the weirdest product launch where we had to do a redesign of the product page because we'd use images of it. This was a children's mental health app, right? Selling into schools. We'd use an image cut out of a school child looking a bit sad, right? Because we're talking about anxiety, mental health, etc. Every teacher we ended up showing that to in the initial launch just couldn't get over the fact that that child was looked sad. And that's all we spoke about in the initial sales conversation. So we had to redesign the brand because of that, right? So, and we'd spent a long time doing all the cutouts for the images, creating the brand and the brand strategy, blah, 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 all wrong. And if we'd have just launched faster, we'd have saved thousands and thousands of pounds on that product launch and got the first sales sooner. So I'm glad that you're holding your nose. And I want people to listen to that. When you feel embarrassed about what it is that you're making, that's good. Because it's the embarrassment that's going to drive you forward. I don't know whether I should admit this, but when I was a product manager, this was one of my key tools for getting things fixed that the team really didn't want to work on is I knew if I dragged them into a research conversation and just got the customer to highlight that exact pain point, they would usually come back in on the weekend and be like, I couldn't bear that they'd shown me that problem. I've spent the weekend and I fixed it. And I'd be, oh, that's cool, because we've been talking about this for 6 months. I just had to show you visually like someone suffering from the problem, right? So yeah, lean into it, get it under people's noses, because I guarantee you're wrong. And it's their feedback which will allow you to, start to actually monetize this sooner rather than later. So we also did a poll in the Facebook group. There we go. In the Facebook group this week to try and, or last week rather, try and work out how I can help you guys in a better way. So we got a very smattering of results. The expert guest thing, I've had some conversation this week with people who are go-to-market experts, people who are expert in building AI systems. I went for dinner with someone the other day who's like a very senior AI developer at DeepMind. So we might have some actual AI royalty coming into the group. Watch this space. I'm going to be bringing in some experts who can round out my weaknesses around, building products. So marketing, go-to-market strategy, finances. We'll probably get some investors in here talking about what they want to see at an early stage, maybe from an angel investor stage. I think that'd be interesting. So you're not always going to have me ranting and raving at you with these presentations. Sometimes there'll be interviews. Sometimes we'll get people in to do guest presentations. So that's great. That's on the way. In terms of the one-to-one product strategy sessions and the accountability sprints, I want to work with you guys in a one-to-one way. So I've had an initial conversation with someone in the group, and we've come up with a plan to do a 90-day sprint looking at her business and looking at how we can get money in the door and growing that in a kind of one-to-one continual like coaching session, I guess. Do the sprint and then I hold her accountability to it. So it's kind of combining those two votes together. If anyone is interested in that, we're going to be hosting like 15-minute long conversations just so I can tell you what that looks like, what the details are, and you can see if you're interested or not. We've got some interesting sessions coming up. Please, if there's anything you have questions about in terms of your product, chuck it in the Facebook group. We will get you some help and attention on your product there. Awesome. Thank you very much, guys.